All right, let's talk about Charlie Munger. We're going to dive deep into the brilliant mind behind the investor and pull the absolute best ideas from his book, Poor Charlie's Almanack. We're talking about the mental frameworks that can help every single one of us think a little better and, honestly, live a whole lot smarter. You know, Munger's entire philosophy really kicks off with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. Have you ever looked at someone incredibly smart, works super hard, and they just make an absolutely terrible decision? It's baffling, right? You just think, how on earth did they get that so wrong? Well, that's exactly where we're going to start. The answer, according to Charlie Munger, wasn't about getting a higher IQ. It was all about thinking better. And look, he was way more than just Warren Buffett's business partner. You should think of him as an architect, but for your brain. This was a man who literally spent his life trying to understand the machinery of good judgment. So what is this machinery of good judgment? Well, it's built on a core idea that sounds almost too simple. Munger believed that extraordinary results don't come from these big flashes of genius. Nope, they come from consistently avoiding simple, dumb mistakes. He literally called it the art of not being stupid. He had this fantastic analogy for it: tennis. Think about professional tennis. The winner is the player who hits these incredible, offensive, unreturnable shots. It's a winner's game. But now, think about your average amateur tennis match. Who wins that game? It's not the person with the fancy serves. It's the person who just makes the fewest mistakes. They win by just keeping the ball in play. And Munger's big point was that for most of us, life and investing, they're a lot more like that amateur's game. So instead of chasing these moments of sheer brilliance, the goal is to build a system that just prevents the unforced errors. It might not be as glamorous, but man, it is a far more reliable path to victory. Okay, so that sounds great, right? Just don't be stupid. But how do you actually do that? How do you build that system? For Munger, the answer was something he called a latticework of models. Now, mental models sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just a core idea from a major field of study that helps you make sense of the world. Think of it as a tool in your mental toolbox. You know, the idea of compound interest from math, that's a mental model. Natural selection from biology, that's another powerful one. And this is so critical because Munger always warned about becoming what he called the man with a hammer. You know the old saying, to a person who only has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. If your only framework is, say, psychology, you'll try to solve every problem as if it's a psychological one. The goal is to have a full toolbox. That's the lattice work. So you can look at a problem and pick the right tool for that specific job. And that toolbox needs to be diverse. You have to go out and actively collect these big ideas from all the major disciplines, from physics, biology, psychology, history, you name it. You don't need a PhD in all of them, not at all. You just need to grasp the core principles. Because the real magic, Munger said, happens when you start seeing how these different models connect and play off each other. So let's grab one of these powerful tools out of the toolbox and see how it works. One of Munger's absolute favorites was as simple as it was profound. Invert, always invert. I know it sounds a little dark, right? But this quote perfectly captures the idea. Instead of asking how to achieve success, you just flip the problem completely on its head and ask, what would guarantee failure? Here's how you can actually apply it. Let's say you want to improve your health. Instead of asking, how do I get healthy? You invert. First, clearly define what unhealthy looks like. Second, list everything that would cause that outcome: a terrible diet, no exercise, poor sleep. And third, you just systematically design a plan to avoid all those things. By focusing on what not to do, the path forward becomes surprisingly clear. All right, next key tool. This one is all about intellectual humility. Munger was absolutely ruthless about understanding the boundaries of his own knowledge. He called this his circle of competence. Just picture a circle. Inside it is all the stuff you deeply understand. Outside the circle is, well, everything else in the universe. Now, Munger said the size of your circle is totally irrelevant. What's absolutely crucial is knowing exactly where the edge is, because all the catastrophic mistakes in life happen the moment you step outside of it. And this is literally how he put it into practice. When he and Buffett looked at any opportunity, they'd put it into one of three buckets. There was the yes pile for things they understood inside and out, the no pile for obvious bad ideas, but the most important pile, and by far the biggest one, was the too tough to understand pile. They just passed on anything that wasn't a crystal clear yes, with zero ego or regret. And this really gets to the heart of it. We live in a world that seems to reward overconfidence. But for Munger, true intelligence was having the ability to quickly and honestly say, I don't know. That simple act of humility is what keeps you out of so much trouble. And you absolutely need that humility because the biggest threat to your decision-making is often your own brain. This brings us to another one of Munger's essential tools, understanding the psychology of human misjudgment. Munger was completely obsessed with cognitive biases. He saw them as the source of pretty much all unforced errors. He knew our brains have these built-in glitches that lead to irrational decisions. So he didn't just read about them, he compiled his own checklist of 25 of these tendencies and studied them relentlessly so he could guard against them in his own thinking. Just take this one for example. Incentive-caused bias. Munger believed this was one of the most powerful forces in the world. He famously said, "Show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome." What he meant was, people will rationalize almost any behavior if the incentive is strong enough. So if you really want to understand why people are doing something, don't listen to what they say. Just look at how they're getting paid. The outcome will almost always follow the incentive. So when you combine all of these tools, avoiding stupidity, using a latticework of models, guarding against your own biases, what does the final strategy actually look like? Well, Munger had a great name for it. Sit still, then pounce. It really looks like this. On one side, you have the typical approach. Constant action, chasing the latest trend, feeling like you have to be doing something all the time. Then, on the other side, you have the Munger way. Extreme patience, doing nothing for long, long stretches. And then, when one of those rare, no-brainer opportunities finally shows up right inside your circle of competence, you act with overwhelming force and decisiveness. This quote just says it all. The hardest part of Munger's entire system isn't the analysis. It's having the sheer discipline to sit on your hands and just wait for the perfect moment. And that really brings us to the foundation of everything. All of these tools are totally useless without a commitment to lifelong learning. It's not about some big single breakthrough. It's about the slow, steady, day-by-day accumulation of wisdom. So the real question Munger leaves us with is this: what will you do today to go to bed a little wiser than you were when you got up?